Hey everyone, Todd Morgano from Zero.G.Strategy, and today I want to talk about how to tell if your company's story is good or bad. Seems like it should be pretty simple, but often it's not. And before we get to the do's and don'ts of corporate storytelling, let's take a second to ask why it's important for your business to have a strong story in the first place. And your story isn't just marketing fluff. It's a fundamental driver of enterprise value. Research shows again and again that companies that have strong, clear stories tend to attract more customers, have more engaged employees, and they generate better returns and achieve higher stock prices than their peers. And also, in today's modern economy, where generative AI is flooding channels with generic content, a powerful narrative has become perhaps the most important differentiator for companies of all sizes and types, even more so than in the past. So, how do you know if you've got a powerful story that's working or one that's weak and forgettable? First thing you need to understand is that you're Yoda, not Luke. You're Dumbledore, not Harry Potter. The most common mistake I see companies make is positioning themselves as the hero of their story. They're not. A good story is rooted entirely in the customer's world. It focuses on their aspirations, hopes, and fears, the obstacles they're trying to overcome, the problems they're trying to solve right now. Your story needs to connect to that. It should also follow a very simple structure. Your story should, number one, recognize the situation your customers are in. Number two, illustrate how that situation is untenable or fraught with challenges, because without tension, you don't have a story. And then third, your story needs to provide a path forward. Introduce the change you bring that's going to help them get to where they want to go or overcome the hurdles in their way. Okay, next bit of advice. Your company story is not usually about your biography. And I'll explain what I mean by usually in a second. But the point I want to make is that as fascinating as you think your story is, so your origin story, how your company started, why, where you've been, how you've grown into the company you are today, people aren't likely going to be into it as much as you are, unfortunately, unless your origin story and biography speaks directly to a customer's current situation and concerns. Again, going back to point number one, you're not the hero of your story. If you're going to draw on your past, you better do it in a way that matters to the present and well into the future. Okay, so sort of related to the previous advice, but still kind of distinct, your story shouldn't be linear. All right, what do I mean by that? Okay, I'll give you an example. Whenever I conduct message training sessions with corporate executives, and I ask them to tell me about their company, they generally start at some beginning point and arrive at some ending point. Their stories are almost always chronological. And it makes sense, a lot of stories are told in that fashion. But in a world that has the attention span of a goldfish, that simply won't cut it. I would not recommend taking someone on a journey with your story. They may not have enough patience to endure the ride. What I suggest instead is something I learned pretty quickly when I was a journalist. To grab people's attention, to get them to focus on the most important thing, start with a bold headline. Then you can provide just a few key support points, and then finally after all that, you can get to the details. There's a reason every news story is structured this way. It works. It makes it easier for people to quickly get what you're talking about and not have to wait around for you to lead them through a bunch of details before making your point. It's better to make your point at the very start, don't bury the lead, and then when you finally do fill in with the details, they'll be more easily understood because they'll be within the context of the big idea you've already articulated. Okay, here's another huge mistake I see companies make all the time. Their stories aren't reflective of the experience people have with them. The story itself might hit all the marks. It's short, it's persuasive, it's rooted in the customer's world, it's evocative and interesting, but it's not accurate to the experience people have with the company. You say you're X, but when I deal with you, you're more like Y. I'd argue that having a well-told story that doesn't match reality is actually worse than having a poorly told story or no story at all, because it sets up an expectation that then you fail to meet, and no one likes that. Think about all the times in your life when you're told something's going to be a certain way, and then it turns out not to be that way. You get angry, right? So before you wax philosophic about your story, make sure you can back it up. All right, moving on. Another critical mistake I see companies make is overcomplicating their stories. Please do yourself a favor. No, wait a second. Do your customers and anyone you want to pay attention to your story a favor. Keep it simple. The best way to express big ideas is with simple, common words. Short sentences, no industry jargon, no superlatives. If your story has a bunch of adjectives, that's a sign you're headed in the wrong direction. If you're beating your chest and it sounds like you're bragging about yourself, just stop. The most powerful stories in the world are simple and elegant. All right, I'm going to contradict myself now. Not all the way, but just a little. Now remember when I told you that your story should be fully rooted in your customer's world. That's still true, but there's a pitfall associated with that advice, a way you could misinterpret it or misapply it. If all you do is copy or try to glom onto some hot or popular cultural trend to try to make yourself irrelevant, or worse, if you attempt to go viral, you're doomed. You'll come across as disingenuous, as fake, a poser, and that's no way to earn trust. Could you attract a lot of eyeballs and attention that way? Sure, but it's not the right kind of attention. And if it's not the right kind of attention, it doesn't do you any good. You can't craft your story entirely by holding up a mirror to society. All right, lastly, I'll say this. As important as it is to tell an effective story, and I do believe that, that's my stock in trade, what you say is still not nearly as important as what you do. If you do great things day in and day out, if you create wonderful experiences every time someone encounters you, if you genuinely help people with the challenges they face, or help them accomplish something faster or better or less expensively, or with fewer headaches than they could have on their own, that story gets repeated over and over among friends. And there's no better way to have your story told than if other people are telling it for you. All right, I hope this helps a little bit, and as always, thanks for spending some time with me, and of course, as always too, reach out if you have questions. Until next time.